If you take a frog and try and throw it in boiling water, it's going to jump out immediately. But if you slowly amp up the temperature, you can literally boil the frog and it won't notice because it becomes acclimated to the new temperature, to the new level. And that is one of the things that narcissists and other people who are emotionally abusive end up doing. They start with love bombing or whatever, and they're nice. And then, the mask slips a little bit and they start with, you start doubting a little bit, but then they gaslight a little. So you question that and they do it a little bit more. And eventually after a couple of years, your friends are like, who the hell are you? Because this is not my friend.
Welcome to the Poison Honey podcast, where we discuss the bitter truths of life with raw vulnerability, honesty, and a dash of humor. I am your host, Manarak of Gray, and before we continue, I have a very quick announcement for you. I am in the process of revamping my podcast for season 3. So this includes giving it its own channel. So for the coming months, I will be re-releasing season 1 and 2. Season 1 is unfortunately only available in audio. I'm sorry, but the rest will be in video content, so stick around to see the evolution. In today's conversation, we explore how we slowly lose ourselves in toxic relationships and the wake-up call that leads to freedom. Let's begin. My guest today is Joe Templin. Joe is a fascinating blend of martial artist, ultra runner, and financial advisor who describes himself as a Swiss Army knife of skills. As the author of Every Day is Excellence and someone actively navigating his own healing journey, Joe brings both professional insight and raw personal experience to our conversation. Hello, Joe.
Good morning.
I've invited you here so you can share your story of personal vulnerability with us. So let's just dive right in. What is the story of personal vulnerability that you want to share with us today?
Geez, just having me stripped naked right away. Nothing. not even a kiss, no flowers first.
Later.
By the way, I use dark humor in a lot of ways. I'm Irish, so this is culturally how I am. So I get along with Dutch people very well. But also with all my friends in the military and everything else, dark humor is a very good coping strategy to be able to get through the BS of things. Yeah. So my story, and I might break down at some point here, is that I just came out of a long-term relationship with significant amount of emotional abuse from a narcissist. Okay. And so I've dealt with lots of coping strategies that I actually developed well before them, which helped make me excellent, which made me a great target for a narcissist. And it is something that I work professionally helping other individuals in terms of their development. And part of that development is overcoming the various traumas that almost all of us have experienced at some point in our life. So I'm still very raw with some of this experience, some of this trauma buying. I've had various other traumas in the past, obviously, that I've used to help fuel me. But so, this is almost like a lifetime look at somebody trying to recover from some significant incidents.
Right. So may I ask how long ago you got out of this relationship?
What time is it? Literally, because it was such a long-term relationship, it's still unwinding, but the final bonds are being broken. And so I'm still in the early stages of grief. I have a lot of anger at times, a lot of frustration, a lot of questioning, trying to make deals with the universe. Oh, just bring her back. Let's, rewind it. So I completely understand what other people are going through or have gone through. And so as one of my close friends reminded me, I am worthy of being loved, and I am a badass. My buddy's like, guys want to be you and women want to be with you. I'm like, yeah, obviously not. But, again, coming back to the humor thing, but that's something that we need to remember. We have 100% success rate of getting through bad days.
Right.
Haven't failed yet, and I'm not planning on failing today. And so that's all we got to focus on is, all right, suck it up and keep going for a little bit longer.
The reason I asked you is because I just a year ago came out of a similar situation. It was a 5 years long relationship. And also I don't know if I'm allowed to classify this person as a narcissist, but they certainly had narcissistic behavior. Let's keep it to that. Mm-hmm. And I recognize this phase of grief that you almost kind of get used to. I say I got used to the pain. I so used to the pain, and I numb myself to this pain that I didn't know myself outside of it. I didn't know life anymore outside of what this pain was. So what are some of the ways that it has impacted you in your life?
Well, talking about the pain is actually a very good idea because I'm an ultra runner. I'm a full contact martial artist with decades of experience. So every part of my body has been injured at some point, especially, my heart and soul at this stage of the game. And so having pain becomes almost the normal. And it's like, oh, my shoulder hurts, my knee. Oh, it's not that bad today. Oh, I can tell it's going to rain because I can feel it in my knee. Those sort of accumulated damages to the body. But emotionally and spiritually, we should not be like that. And it's getting through that pain that you became accustomed to. It's the theory of the boiling frog. If you take a frog and try and throw it in boiling water, it's going to jump out immediately. But if you slowly amp up the temperature, you can literally boil the frog and it won't notice because it becomes acclimated to the new temperature, to the new level. And that is one of the things that narcissists and other people who are emotionally abusive end up doing. They start with love bombing or whatever, and they're nice. And then, the mask slips a little bit and you start doubting a little bit, but then they gaslight a little. So you question that and they do it a little bit more. And eventually after a couple of years, your friends are like, who the hell are you? Because this is not my friend. You're acting different. And it's being able to pull yourself out of that and look and say, holy crow. What the hell am I thinking? What am I doing? I would not tolerate this. 2 years ago, I would not tolerate somebody treating my friend this way. I'm allowing this other individual to treat me this way.
Right. And did you find that, did you start losing friends or people close to you as well? Or maybe people weren't talking to you as much as a result of this relationship?
It wasn't as a result of the relationship. I also have special needs kids and I work insane hours building my business and everything. So time is at a premium for me anyway, but whatever time I had was either being spent with my kids or with this person. And so it wasn't like people noticed that I was spending less time or anything, especially with COVID, that changed things up dramatically. But I noticed looking back, and some of my friends who live all the way across the country, so I only get to talk to them rarely, are like, dude, what's going on? Because I can see and feel the changes. I can hear it in your voice. I can notice in your texts. They're a little bit darker than usual, even though dark humor, as I said, is part of that. But there's a little bit more edge to it. There's some suffering coming through, and so people who really, really know you can hear that and see that, and your best friends will actually call you out on it. Yes. That's the difference between a friend and an enabler, actually.
But how did you feel when they called you out? Because for me, sometimes it sounded like they were speaking Chinese to me. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. How was this experience?
Right. Because you're so emotionally tied in, almost Stockholm syndrome to this other individual that you're like, dude, no, you're not seeing it. She's just having a bad day, or she's under a lot of stress. There's stuff going on that you're not aware of. And they're like, dude, listen to yourself. You're using the same denial mechanisms that I did X years ago when you helped me get through my, alcohol addiction, or when I was going through, the same sort of thing. So having those people who can literally hold up a mirror and say, hey.
Yeah, it's very important. And still, I wonder, like, because a part of me wishes that they have perhaps told me sooner when I wasn't as deep in, but I still wonder, like, if I was already like thinking like I don't understand the language you're speaking, I wonder if that would have even made a difference if they had told me, because as you said, you're so deep in there, and you have like beautiful, amazing plans that you're kind of making with this person, like your plans. I guess this is like one of the things that hooks you, because you're like, no, but we're working towards something, right? And that's something just keeps being pushed.
Right. And we might have been working towards something, but they were in the process of taking. And that's one of the big things is in a lot of these relationships, there is a taker, and their focus is on what can I get now versus what can we build together. So it's very extractive in terms of the mindset, as opposed to constructive, which those of us who build businesses for a living, who have long range focus because of athletic backgrounds, people who tend to be high in empathy are looking for this longer range versus the what makes me feel good in the moment sort of approach that others have.
Yeah, the quick fix in a sense.
Exactly. And it's a fix in that they're like an addict and that they need that hit. And so they're willing to violate the relationship. They're willing to go do, different things to get said hit.
Right. And like from the point that you decided, okay, enough is enough, what has helped you to kind of get out of that situation?
Well, I'm a writer by background, so I actually wrote an entire book as a cathartic thing, Everyday Excellence, where I was doing a lot of research around this and a lot of writing. And so anybody who goes through and reads this book and reads it day by day like it's intended, it's basically a multivitamin for life. Right. They can see various pain points. They can hear when I'm talking about, interacting with your crush or trying to work on your relationship. They can feel my pain on that. And so writing it was very important. And the person that caused all of this pain, I actually gave a copy to. She hasn't read it, of course, but and I never call her out by name, and I never will, because it always take the high road. But if she actually reads it, she'll know. And other people around me who read this book, they can say, "Oh yeah, I can see what you're inferring to." Yeah. So the art of the poet is to not say everything. And so I write lots of poetry. I mean, literally, I write 1 or 2 poems a day and have for the past couple of years in terms of dealing with this as part of my catharsis. So that's one of the things that I would recommend to your listeners is find some way to express what's going on in your heart and soul. If you're a painter, paint. If you're a artist and draw. If you're a writer, write. If you're a musician, sing, or whatever your particular thing is. Find a artistic expression that you can utilize on a regular basis, essentially daily, to help channel this. And you're going to, one, have a lot of very angry stuff that you're producing at times, but 2, there will be some very sad things, and there'll be some happy ones that come out of it. But it's part of integrating your light and dark, integrating your shadow, healing in ways. And so find something along those lines that you can do on a regular basis to let these emotions and experiences come forth in a healthier manner.
Right. So what if someone says, someone is me in this case,
Somewhat me, being honest.
I'm guilty. But I also write poetry, and I in fact also did something similar to process what happened. And there's also some events that happened after the relationship, like you fall from one narcissist to the other, right?
Yep.
I wrote poetry, and I wrote a short story and poetry. But I have like difficulties like really doing it every day. Do you have like any tips to like make a routine or something that?
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I talk about in the book is the concept of habit stacking that James Clear introduces in his book, Atomic Habits. So I'm a morning person. I always have been. My mom said I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning all the time, and I still get up at 4 to 5 a.m. no matter what. So we all get up in the morning, right? You wake up, you get out of bed.
Julie,
so since that's when my most productive is, I literally make sure that I take advantage of that. So I get up, I grab my half cup of coffee that I've left there to start. I hit the start on the coffee pot so that the fresh pot's ready to go. And I do a couple minutes of working out just to get the blood going, my brain going. And then I sit down and I write. And I write every single morning, almost immediately after getting up, because there's stuff in my head from when I was sleeping. Your subconscious, that's how you process information. That's what dreams are. And if you're not sleeping, you're not properly processing that. So that's one of the things that people with insomnia or sleep issues have to be concerned about, is it's not allowing their brain to reflect upon the previous day and encode memories properly. So this is one of the things that we see with people who have PTSD or complex PTSD, is the lack of memory and the lack of integration, compartmentalization in a lot of ways of what they've experienced and done. So this actually allows you to integrate all the different parts into the whole of your being. And we can talk about that in a metaphysical point of view, but we can also talk about it in a basic biological point of view. And so I would get up and I would start writing. And sometimes I would have entire poems almost written in my head when I woke up, and I just barf them out on a page. And sometimes it was sitting there and doing more in-depth writing, whether I'm writing an article for one of the various magazines that I write for, groups that I write for, writing pages in the book. I finished one book and 2 days later started writing another one. So it's allowing you to do that, but it's a process. It's a habit. Get up, have the cup of coffee, do a quick little workout to get the brain going, start writing, get everything out of my head, write a little bit to like start things. That would go and do a real workout, 20 minutes of running or half hour of weights or martial arts or what have you. Then when my brain is fully lit up, because exercise is like music in a lot of ways, in that it causes the entire brain to get active, both left side and right side, and everywhere from your spinal cord all the way through the neocortex. Everything's just lighting up like a Christmas tree if you were to look at an EEG. And so that I would do that. I'd sit down and I would just go until whatever was in my head and heart was out. Right. Okay, that could be 5 minutes, that could be an hour. So, but then, because I'm an early riser, before anybody else is getting up, I've already gotten in a workout and I've created for the day. Then what I do is I do some reading at that point. I read like the Daily Stoic or Robert Greene's Daily Laws. I read my own copy of my book every day at this point. And I have to do the homework assignment. Sometimes they suck. But then you do that and all of a sudden you're you're prepped for a better day overall. And that's not to say you're not going to have every day is going to be sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns and cupcakes and all that, nor is every single day going to be super productive. There's going to be bad days. There's going to be bad moments where something hits you like, oh, geez, remember when we did this? Or a picture pops up in your phone, 1 year ago today. That's basically the worst.
Yeah. I like the idea of working out because I got the cup of coffee down. That's like a routine already. It's not an issue. But I find that I often, especially now, I work for my own business, but like my 9 to 5 job is also at home. And often I have to start at like 8 o'clock in the morning. So I roll up out of bed at like 7:30. I got my cup of coffee and I'm sitting again right behind the computer. So I like this idea of integrating some kind of movement before essentially sitting down again after having woken up. I will definitely try this. And you also sent me
set your alarm for 15 minutes earlier. 15 minutes is not a big deal. You'll adjust to it physically within a couple of days if it takes you even that long. And it doesn't have to be, doing 500 burpees or anything crazy like that. Just a couple of minutes of whatever you want that is going to help you. So, for example, as a martial artist, I believe in working on my fundamentals. So every single day, I throw 100 punches with each hand and have done so for as long as I can remember. Even when I had a back injury over last summer, I could not move. I was able to get myself in the shower, have the hot shower beating on my back, and be able to do the punches at a 10th speed, but I still did them. Right. So it creates that routine, and I have accomplished this. So even if nothing else good happens that day, I've at least got that checked off of my overall list. And it ends up developing excellence. At this point, I've thrown probably 10 million punches each hand, so I don't have to think about it. So doing those little things that help you overall, that create that consistency, that basically triggering in a positive way of X, then Y, then Z, it's a positive domino effect. If you can establish routines and set up your environment physically and mentally / emotionally to be able to do things along that way, that where you're going to have the positive outcome. So one thing I do a lot of is I've used music for decades as a way to help flip the switch. So, for example, wrestlers have their walk-up music, and you hear the breaking glass, and that Stone Cold Steve Austin or what have you. Baseball players have their music too. I mean, I'm a huge Yankees fan, and you would hear Enter Sandman, the first few strains, and you knew Mariano Rivera was coming on it. For me, I've got one song that I listen to at the end of all my runs, Thor, the Powerhead by Manowar, nice, good, hair metal band, but also Queen's Princes of the Universe, the theme to Highlander.
I love this song.
And so I can hear the opening strains of Highlander, here we are, and all of a sudden I'm flipping the switch. I mean, you saw me stand up brighter. So 10 minutes before we jumped on this call, I actually played that. That's something that I do all the time. So it doesn't matter if I'm having a good day or a bad day. It doesn't matter if my morning was crap or my morning was awesome. I hear the opening strains of that. I'm ready to perform. So one of the things I would tell your listeners is find that song that is going to positively trigger you, that's going to get your blood pumping, that's going to mentally engage you. Because if you use it regularly and program yourself almost in a Pavlovian manner, you can hear just the opening 3 seconds and it has the same effect almost of the whole song, and you're ready to go.
I think one of those songs for me would be like Seven Nations Army. Like, dun, dun, dun,
awesome song.
Yes. Immediately.
Okay. So, if that song, which I love because it's got a real good beat and everything to it, and it's so distinctive, which is something else that you want. If you find that works for you, before you're going to do anything important, play it. And when you're in just a really good mood and you're at your highest energy level, play it, because what's going to happen is you're going to mentally connect the good feeling and performance with that song. And then what's going to happen is instead of it being connected, it's going to become causality in your system. And so you'll hear the start of the song and your body will be in go mode. And it literally will flip the switch and you'll be ready to do what you need to do.
That's really interesting and practical, I find, ways of reprogramming yourself, because we hear a lot nowadays about you have to reprogram yourself, but no one that I've heard
tells you how.
Exactly. How do I do this? And you're in a loop trying different things, and essentially
doesn't really work a lot of the times. You keep falling back on your old patterns, but this is really helpful.
Another good way to do it is to write what you're trying to achieve. So, for example, I could reach down there and grab one of my yellow pads, but my goal for the year with my book is to sell 1 million copies.
Right.
And so on my phone, I've got a meditation app that was put together by one of my friends, is Elfie Taylor. And one of the daily affirmations is me recording of myself saying the affirmation that I will sell 1 million books this year. I feel really good selling 1 million books. And it's 10 minutes of just me on loop saying that, but it's my own voice. So I can hypnotize, because in our head, we're using our own voice.
Right. Yes.
And so when you play it, it's more powerful than anybody else. You could be literally saying the exact same thing, but it would have 1/10 of the power, because it's my voice, my cadence, my verbiage with my affirmation. So that's one thing. And then writing it. There's something called haptic feedback. So when I'm working with a client, I tell them, write this down. Don't type it, write it. Because if I'm being a code monkey, it doesn't matter which button I hit. My body can't really tell the difference. But if I take a piece of paper and a pen or pencil and I write 1 million books, my body is recognizing the letters and the words, and it's further embedding it into my being. And so writing down that thing, that affirmation, 10 times in the morning, 5 times at lunch, 5 times in the evening, that's 20 repetitions on it. That is beating it into my subconscious that I'm going to sell 1 million books. I don't know how yet, but that's the job of the subconscious to figure that out.
That was my next question. How far along are you on this goal of 1 million books?
Well, we're actually having a re-release with a new publisher of the book in about a week. So it's going to look really cool. It's going to be hardcover and everything. So this is the original version. And, I've sold a couple of thousand copies, which is nice. It's the Kindle #1 new release in professional development. But with this re-release, we're going to be able to really hit this thing hardcore. So I feel not great about it, but pretty good. And I've got enough time to make the goal come to fruition. And myself and the people who are closest to me that I interact with are committed to this goal. So they're, my 11-year-old son's like, "Da, have you sold 1 million yet? Da, have you sold 1 million yet?" So of course I got him. And then like my major domo, my right arm, Athena, is constantly on it. My buddy Juan, my amigo, he's like helping build stuff out because he's a computer genius in terms of marketing and stuff like that. So I've got these people around me who buy into the vision and are supporting it with their own skill set, in addition to bumping me up. Like my buddy Lane, when I was having that bad day, he's the one who said, "Dude, you're a badass. Remember that." Yeah. So sometimes you need that kick in the butt. So I do that for a lot of my friends and clients, but it's always good to have somebody remind us when we're having that rough day, because the strongest people sometimes need to be reminded how strong they actually are.
Yeah, I actually have a friend that does this. And before she used to do it, after, let's say, I call her with like an issue or having like a mental breakdown or something. And now just out of the blue, she sends me like reminders like, "You're strong, and it's like, always, it's so touching, because sometimes I tend to forget that, because I can be very strict on myself. Like I want to achieve this, and if it's not going the way I want to, I start like panic mode basically, and feeling maybe like an imposter in some ways, that I or that I don't deserve what it is that I'm asking for. So it is very important to have a supportive environment. I completely agree.
And having that friend who can, when you're there and you're struggling, can turn you around and make you look at how far you've already come and say, "Dude," or "Dudette," or "Hey, buddy, look at what you've accomplished." Because especially when we have these goals that are incredible like this, we don't realize what we've already overcome to get there, what we've already done. We're just focused on, okay, this step here is so difficult, or I'm having so much trouble, reaching the next level or getting here, or I'm frustrated. Yes. You don't realize that, wow, I've already done more than 75% of the people on the planet. Yeah. I've already written a book. Okay, how many people have done that? Okay, I've gotten the book published. All right, how many people actually say, I want to write a book and actually get to the point of getting it published? Okay, those are huge steps that we don't realize how big it is until somebody else makes us step back and look at the arc of our story so far and be like, whoa.
And I find it's also helpful sometimes to just yourself take a step back. Like I did that recently. All this book and podcast and things, like I started it maybe 2 years ago. I made a plan of what I'm going to do and why. And then I started, and the end goal kind of changed, because my initial idea was that, okay, I'm going to write a book and do the podcast, and then I can help, for example, businesses by offering them the service and of setting up a podcast for them, these types of things. But then I helped organization with a crowdfunding campaign, and I thought that it's not exactly my end goal that I want to do it, because it's like just not the way I want to use my talents. But then recently I took a step back. I thought, okay, I started doing this for a reason. And then I kind of wrote out, where do I want to go with this? And I came out that actually I just want to like set up an academy for like innovative arts, right? That for especially focused on like marginalized groups of people that might not get the opportunity to go to like art school, but have like brilliant ideas. And it's not like just simple arts for the sake of arts, but it's art with a meaning to like change their own environments and these things like that. And that just like lit a fire in me again. So I think it's very important to not only have someone that can like put you aside and like look at what you accomplished, but for you to consciously take like a step back and like rewrite everything and throw out what's not working. And it's completely fine to readjust your path. I find that
Right.
I think important to.
And as Nietzsche said, if your why is strong enough, you can overcome any how.
Right.
And one of the ways that I look at this is you've got this big goal, what you're trying to accomplish. Look at life like it's a video game in some ways.
Right.
And you've got this big quest that you're trying to go for, where, you want the castle, save the princess, get the gold, whatever. But along the way, you have these various side quests. Okay, the side quest might be you take a gig job doing something. It might be, okay, you started studying at college and you decide not to. You were in a relationship that did not work out, like with our situation, okay? But those are not lost times. Those are side quests, and side quests are meant to get you resources and skills to help you in your main quest. So the relationship that didn't work out, what did you learn from it? What memories do you have? What emotional growth have you gotten from it? The best example that I can use is Steve Jobs, when he dropped out of college but still hung out at the college, would attend just all these random classes that interested him. And he took a calligraphy class. And that led to the plethora of fonts that became available with the Macintosh, which eventually came on over to Windows. So the reason why you can have a cool signature in your email is because Steve Jobs took a calligraphy class when he was wandering around Bard campus. And it's those little things that you don't know how it's going to affect you overall. But as Steve Jobs said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only look back and see it. So the more dots that we have, the more data, the more skills that we've acquired, the more resources that we've acquired on these side quests, if we remain true to the main quest of our life, what we're trying to accomplish, allow us to have more capability to get there. And so that's one of the reasons why I look at any of these things that other people might call failures, and I look at them as expensive tuition, learning experiences, scars that give me good stories that I can tell people. But in the end, it makes me a better human being and better equipped, more resilient for where I'm trying to get to down the road.
That's really interesting to hear that story of Steve Jobs, because like I love to learn, and I have a guilty pleasure of getting into new courses. I don't finish all of them, but I find that I learn until the point where it sparks me to like go ahead, right? And
Yep.
then at the end of the day, I thought, it's fine. It's like, or maybe if I don't finish it now, maybe down the line I'll gotten further enough that I actually have the time to sit and finish them.
Or when you're ready, you come back to it. And so being autodidactic in a lot of ways like this, you can take from psychology, you can take from history, you can take from these different areas, and you put them all in your brain. And my friend Chris Millis, who is a writer and cartoonist, says you fill your brain with all these different things and they're going to muddle around, and you just pull out different concepts, or you have these different ideas that then have relationships with each other, and you get all these baby ideas that are synthetic from these different things. And the more that you can cram on in there and create a conducive environment for them, the more and better output that you're going to get. And so this continuous learning idea that like Einstein embraced and all these others is one of the big differences between those who are able to continue to produce innovative and effective work for years and decades, as opposed to those who might be a one and done because they've spent their entire life to do that one album or write that one book or that one painting, versus somebody who is in this growth mindset, who is continuously learning and adding new things on in. They are going to have new things to say and express in their own media.
Right. Yeah, I find really, like, I love, as I said, I love learning. I love just the idea of schools and institutions, any kind of learning environment. I'm completely sold on it. If I could still be learning, or I mean, like in school right now, I would do it. But
why not? You got Khan Academy. MIT's got their entire course catalog on YouTube, the entire one from MIT. Through Coursera, you can take a lot of these free courses, like the course on happiness from Yale University is available for free there. Yeah, you don't get a certificate, but you get the knowledge.
Right.
I'd rather have knowledge than another, set of letters or piece of paper. I mean, I got more degrees than a thermometer, so I don't need more degrees.
Right.
I just need more information, more knowledge, more wisdom. And there's nothing out there stopping me. My mom was an educator, and she always said, the quote by Mark Twain, never let school interfere with your education.
Good one.
So, and this is one of the ways that we can help overcome the emotional damage from bad relationships, is to relight this fire for learning and desire and understanding. I mean, hell, I picked up a degree in counseling to try and understand what the hell was going on within my relationship.
Right.
And so, I'm like, oh yeah, you're a dark triad narcissist, but sometimes you don't want that knowledge, but it still makes me better.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
maybe now you can recognize the red flags beforehand.
I think in the moment when you actually, the knowledge comes to you, sometimes it can be hard and maybe slap you in the face in a sense. Like, whoa, how didn't I see that? Like you were saying earlier. Nope. But at the end of the day, I'm always happy to have learned it, because, it makes it easier maybe to spot those red flags and to, I find, set boundaries, because once you notice that, you can say, well, no, I'm not accepting this behavior. I know what you're doing.
It also gives you the Cassandra insight a little bit. You have foresight. You can see, this is where this road goes, and you can decide whether or not to walk on it. And also, it's sort of like an example that I teach young martial artists is very quickly they learn, don't block with your face because it hurts. And so we're still blocking with our heart. We're still taking those hits very often. And as a martial artist, when you're a brand new martial artist, you get hit one time and it hurts. but you get used to it. You can build up a tolerance. You toughen your body, you toughen your mind. And unfortunately, in these sort of relationships that we were in, we end up, that first hit to the heart hurts, but we overcome it, especially, with the resilient attitude and all this. So we keep getting hit and we don't realize how bad the hurt actually is because we built that tolerance. Okay? Going back to our boiling frog.
So how does one protect their heart in any situation, especially such a relationship?
One of the things is have a wingman or a wingwoman, have spotters, have people run interference. Say, dude, remember so-and-so? Just like her. Have somebody be able to throw the flag for you. Because if you don't see the red flags, because you're got, the rose-tinted glasses on, you're getting all goo-goo gaga-eyed and all that again, and you're going down the same path because, we repeat our mistakes when it comes to our heart simply because we're looking for something very often to fill a void within us. And so we tend to date the same sort of person over and over again. So one thing is you have to take time after your relationship to try and heal and fill that void on yourself. That's the reason why you should never jump straight into another relationship. You need to take the time to figure out why the previous ones didn't work and what is, I don't want to say wrong with us, because that sounds too negative, but we all have, voids. We all have flaws. We've got these tendencies. So why am I doing that? And what can I do to correct this? What can I do to fill this need in some ways without being dependent on another human being? Okay. So internally versus external gratification sort of thing. And so if we do that, then if we're starting down that same path and our friend is like tapping us on the shoulder, dude, don't do it. Don't do it. You know where this is going to go. And we're like, oh, this time it will be different. So you need that tough love from another person who you completely trust. Very often it's a member of the opposite sex who you love, but not necessarily in a physical manner. So like my best friend Ziem does this for me. Athena does this for me. I've got a couple of women who are very, very close to me who are like, dude, you've got a type. Okay. They're this tall. They look like this. They have this sort of psychological, issue. I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay. So like, they're like, yeah, we're going to eventually hook you up with somebody, but their name's not going to start with A. Right. They're not going to be blonde. They're not going to be 5'5", so they're like, yeah, we've got the entire rest of the world over here, even though you always, get magnetically drawn to those because of some of the holes in you.
Makes sense. I noticed that I tend to attract people with like commitment issues, and I desperately want like commitment. As you said, like I have this mindset of building, so I essentially want someone that wants that same thing. But often I find more people with commitment issues and people that actually want to like commit and work.
Because they want you to do all the work and they don't have to because they've never learned how to do the work. Right. And that's one of the things where they say opposites attract, the narcissist and the empath, the giver and the taker, the person who has the long range plans and discipline with getting together with the person with the hedonistic tendencies of current enjoyment. Right. Because, we balance each other. No, we're really different. Okay. And so like a jigsaw puzzle, we fit together in a lot of ways, but we're not necessarily locking into what's the substrate beneath that is actually the same that keeps us together long range. And that's part of the problem. It's the surface match, but the underneath is too different.
That makes sense. Yeah. Still, it's difficult. I mean, we're human. She said,
if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth it.
No, we wouldn't have to write books about it and how to get things. Yeah.
And there wouldn't be love stories and movies and songs and poetry books and all this. Okay. It's because we've been screwing up this way for as long as humanity's been around.
That it almost seems like it's supposed to be like this in a sense. But I mean, I can only hope that one day we, or maybe our children or children's children kind of evolve past that stage. But So far, I don't know.
Well,
But
if you have kids, like I've got 3 kids, I'm making sure that they see and learn the lessons. And so they understand, okay, this is the way that Di interacts with people. This is how you should treat a woman no matter what. Even if you want to push her off a tall building, sometimes you never raise your voice. You never raise your hand. You try and communicate. You always take the high ground. So people are going to either see how their parents act and want to be exactly like them as a good model, or be the exact opposite.
Right.
So like I tried to act like my parents. My parents were married until the day my mom died from her cancer, and my dad still loves her 8 years later. Okay. And so I had very good models. So either you have good models like that and you rebel against them, or you try and embrace them. If you have bad models, more than likely than not, you're going to inherit trauma from that and you're going to act that same way. So with my relationship where we have one who's a giver, one who's a taker, hopefully the children see and can assess and make their own decisions as to which they want to be, because it is over 50% of choice. Yeah, there's some biological programming there because of, like mental illnesses or other biological things, but more than 50% of the output is the result of the daily choices and how we want to interact. So they can choose to have a good relationship or to try and have a good relationship and do the things that are additive, or they can try and follow the negative extractive path and just take in the relationship. Hopefully we model the best for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reminded of there's the saying that we always try to essentially parent our children different than we were parenting ourselves, but often that creates even more, or not more, it creates different traumas for the next generation that we can't foresee.
And so that's why you see this pendulum swinging back and forth, because, for example, the baby boomers, okay, the baby boomers were taught don't trust anybody over 30.
Right.
Okay, you don't trust the adults. And, because they grew up with these very strict parents from the greatest generation. Okay, so they were off at war, okay, and they grew up Great Depression era and all this. So the baby boomers swung the other way, highly consumeristic.
Right.
Okay, much more liberal in terms of how they interact with their kids and all that. So the children of most boomers are millennials. So if you look at, they either go much further or they swing back the opposite way. I'm a prototypical Gen Xer. Okay. My dad traveled all the time for work. I was one of 6 kids. I mean, our summer was okay, eat breakfast, get on out. You can drink from the hose. I don't want to see you till lunch, and then I don't want to see you again till dark.
Right.
Okay. And we just did things on our own. And so we became highly, highly independent. Our kids are the Zoomers, the Generation Z for the most part. So, it's all overscheduled and, we're trying to spend time with them and all these things because we didn't have that. We were the first generation of divorced kids for the most part. My family wasn't, but a ton of my friends were. And so that relational trauma that we've seen and experienced is passed down to the next generation. So if you talk to most Zoomers, a lot of them never want kids. Because of what they've experienced, they don't want long-term relationships. And they're still young and everything, but the proclivity to not want those relationships and not have children and all that is so much higher at their age than it was for previous generations. And that's because of what they experienced. So we need to try and heal ourselves because, as it says in the Bible, the sins of the father are passed down to the son, to the 7th generation. What we do and what we've experienced carries on forward, whether it's good or bad.
It makes sense. And I do, as you said, I do notice this a lot of people don't want to have children and they don't want to, the commitment issues, right? They don't want to have like a long-term relationship, and it's hard out there in the dating world right now because of this reason. If you do want to kind of like have this commitment and have children. I do find a lot of people are kind of blaming it on like global warming, but to me, it makes a lot more sense that it's a result of this trauma that.
Yeah, global warming is an excuse, just like everything else. They're using it as the external reason to wrap their feelings and their pain in as an excuse.
Yeah, makes it easy, right? It's just I don't have to deal with myself and my pain. And there's no pain. In fact, the pain is that the world is ending because of global warming, and
right.
This is the reason. Yeah, it makes sense. So, how did this whole experience change the way you see yourself?
I have to remind myself that, no, I don't completely suck. I'm not a bad human being. I can do this. I've survived bad days. I'm going to continue to survive bad days. There's going to be bad days, but that's life. And, things will get better over time. So it's just like the grieving process in a lot of ways. When my mom died, you go through anger and resentment and grief and then acceptance and occasional sorrow and any long-term relationships like that. So I read something a couple of weeks ago where it said that if you're coming out of a long-term relationship, that it's going to take you roughly half the time that you are in that relationship to heal. So if you were married for 20 years, it's going to take you close to a decade to get over it. And as we saw during the COVID epidemic, the two groups that saw the highest spike in divorce rates were those newly married and those who were married 20 years and plus. Right? So if you had a very intense short-term relationship of 1 year, 6 months from now, you'll be over it.
Right.
If you had a 7-year relationship, it's going to take, that relationship is actually going to be with you between being in it and the lingering effects for a decade. If it was a 25-year relationship, you're talking 3.5 plus decades that is going to be with you. So if that relationship started in your early 20s, you're getting almost to the point of retirement before you are fully able to move beyond. So it's going to take time, and you can accelerate some of that time by doing harder work on yourself. There's an old saying that in financial services, you can be a first-year agent in your first year, or you can be a one in your 5th year.
Right.
So facing the pain, embracing the suck, as my military friends like to put it, running towards the screams, looking right into the abyss, to quote Nietzsche, going right there and unflinchingly pulling it apart, doing the after action item, debriefing yourself, having close friends sit there and talk it through with you, basically doing counseling, whether it's formal with a shrink or more informal, like with a group of your buddies over beers or whatever adult beverage you choose, and consistently going there so that you can pull it apart and look at what happened from different angles and extract all the lessons so that these different components of your psyche can be reassembled properly is critical, because our partners who abused us for that long built up an edifice around us. So we need to tear that down and take the pieces of that in ourselves and reassemble into something better.
Right. Makes sense. So is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we?
It's going to take time. You can do this. Find the tools to help you, whether it's people, whether it's stuff on the internet, whether it's books. My book can and will help you. You'll take from you need. And actually, as a thank you to your listeners, Narak, if they go to my website, everyday-excellence.com, and they put in the code MOG, Narak of Gray, MOG, they'll be able to get a discount on the books to be able to help themselves out.
Great. So go get it. I saw the book. It's like, it's daily practices, like from the 1st of January until the 31st of December. And there's just some inspirational and motivational exercises that you can follow along. So if you recognize yourself in our story, essentially, and you want to better yourself, definitely check out that book. And on that note, thank you so much for sharing your story of vulnerability with me, with us. And maybe I see you another time on the Poison Honey podcast. Thank you very much.
I'm looking forward to it. Be excellent and grow today.
Thank you.